From the deserts of the Namib to the heart of Windhoek, the story of Namibia is one of suffering, resilience, and an unbreakable desire for freedom. Namibia's history is scarred by conquest. In 1884, the land was seized by Germany, and the territory became known as German Southwest Africa. For decades, the indigenous people endured unspeakable cruelty under colonial rule. Their lands were stripped away, their voices silenced, and their lives governed by foreign powers. When World War I broke out, South Africa invaded and occupied the territory, replacing German control with its own form of domination. But South Africa's rule was not meant to last. After the war, the League of Nations gave South Africa a mandate to administer the land. Yet what followed was decades of oppression and exploitation. Instead of preparing Namibia for independence, South Africa ruled it as a de facto fifth province, enforcing racist apartheid policies that stripped black Namibians of rights, dignity, and land. The people resisted. In 1917, Mandume Yandemufayo, the last king of the Kwanyama, died in battle against South African forces. His death marked more than the fall of a king. It was a symbol of the brutal fight for survival. In the decades that followed, anger grew. In 1959, South African colonial forces attempted to forcibly move black residents out of Windhoek. The community resisted, and 11 unarmed protesters were killed. That bloodshed sparked something that could not be silenced, a united movement for Namibian liberation. By the 1960s, as the winds of freedom swept across Africa and nations gained independence, Namibia's people demanded the same. Yet South Africa tightened its grip. To justify its rule, Pretoria introduced the Odendaal Plan, a scheme to divide Namibia into so-called Bantustans, homelands designed to weaken and segregate black communities. It was apartheid dressed up as development. But Namibians would not accept this fate. In 1960, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO, rose as the voice of resistance. 6 years later, on 26 August 1966, their armed wing, the People's Liberation Army of Namibia, launched its first attack at Umugulugwombasho. The struggle had entered a new and deadly phase. Guerrilla warfare began. International voices joined the call. In 1971, the International Court of Justice declared South Africa's presence illegal. Workers across Namibia rose up in massive strikes, risking their lives to oppose a system many compared to slavery. But Pretoria would not yield. It tried internal settlements, conferences, and puppet governments, but none could erase the fact Namibians wanted freedom, real freedom. The fight dragged on for decades. Namibia's liberation struggle became tied to the Cold War. South Africa, backed by Western powers who feared communism, clung to control. SWAPO found support in Angola and from the Soviet bloc. The battleground of Namibia became part of a larger struggle between East and West, with Namibian lives caught in the middle. Yet the will of the people remained unbroken. The Western Contact Group, made up of world powers, pushed for peace. In 1978, the United Nations proposed Resolution 435, demanding free elections under UN supervision. South Africa resisted, but the world was watching. By the late 1980s, change was unstoppable. International negotiations brought Angola, Cuba, South Africa, and the superpowers to the table. Agreements were signed in New York in December 1988. South Africa would finally leave Namibia. But even then, the transition was fragile. In April 1989, thousands of armed SWAPO fighters crossed the border from Angola. Violence flared and lives were lost. Yet the United Nations, led by Marty Ahtisaari, stood firm. Quevuet, South Africa's brutal counter-insurgency unit, was disbanded. refugees returned home, and against all odds, Namibia's first free elections were held in November 1989. The result was clear. SWAPO won the majority of the vote, and the long dream of freedom was at last within reach. On 21st March 1990, the world turned its eyes to Windhoek. Under the bright Namibian sky, Sam Nujoma was sworn in as the nation's first president. Beside him stood Nelson Mandela, recently freed from prison, a symbol of Africa's unbreakable march toward liberation. Representatives from across the world bore witness as Namibia was reborn. That day was more than independence, it was the end of over a century of foreign domination. Namibia stood tall, no longer German, Southwest Africa, no longer a pawn of apartheid, but a proud nation, free at last. And even then the struggle was not fully complete. In 1994, after patient negotiation, Namibia reclaimed Walvis Bay and its offshore islands, finally uniting its territory and fulfilling the vision of sovereignty. Today, the story of Namibia reminds us of something eternal. Freedom is never handed down willingly by oppressors. It is demanded, fought for, and earned by the courage of ordinary people who refuse to bow. Namibia's history is not just a story of colonization, it is a story of defiance, resilience, and triumph. A reminder that no matter how long the night, the dawn of freedom always comes.